Hello guys, the topic of today's video is going to be advertising. So we're going to talk about advertising today. The first thing that I would say about advertising is that it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. You can't avoid advertising. It's on social media, it's on the TV, it's on the street. It's ubiquitous. There's no way to avoid advertising. It's just everywhere. Now, a lot of us don't like advertising, right? A lot of people, myself included, a lot of people don't like advertising. But unfortunately, advertising is kind of like a necessary evil. Yes, it's a bit of a necessary evil. Because if you want to have businesses, if you want the economy to run and you want people starting businesses, then businesses need to advertise their products and their services. So, it's kind of a bit of a necessary evil, even though sometimes advertising can get on your nerves a little bit, right? When you see advertising everywhere and it's ubiquitous, right? You can't avoid it. It can get on your nerves sometimes. But like I said, it's a bit of a necessary evil. We kind of need it. Now, the funny thing about advertising is that if you ask anybody, if you ask them, do you think advertising works on you? Do you think advertising affects what you purchase and what you buy? And most people, the majority of people will say, no. Advertising doesn't affect me at all. I buy what I want and I make my own choices about what I buy based on the price and if it's a good product and those kinds of things. So if you ask most people will say that advertising doesn't work on them, right? That they make their own choices. Nevertheless, companies and businesses spend hundreds of millions of dollars and pounds and euros, whatever currency you want to talk about. Companies spend hundreds of millions on advertising. So something doesn't quite add up here, does it? Something doesn't really add up because people think that advertising doesn't affect them. But simultaneously, companies spend hundreds of millions on advertising every year. So something really doesn't add up here, does it? Perhaps advertising is a lot more effective than you might think. Now, there are a multitude of different ways that companies and businesses can advertise. There's a multitude of different platforms they can use to advertise. There's online marketing. You've got more traditional methods of advertising like television and radio, and even things like billboards. So this is called a billboard, okay? So billboards are a more traditional method of advertising. So yeah, there's a multitude of different options for businesses and companies to advertise. But how does advertising work really? It doesn't feel like we are affected by advertising, does it? But as I said before, something doesn't really add up because we feel like we make our own choices about what we buy, but simultaneously companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising. So what's going on here? Well, one way that advertising works is brand recognition. Yes, brand recognition. Because if you think about it, if you go to, say, the supermarket, and let's say you want to buy some toilet roll, right? You want to buy some toilet roll. There are lots of brands. There are many different brands, but essentially all of these brands are more or less the same. Right, they're more or less exactly the same. I mean, it's paper, it's toilet paper. So there isn't really much of a difference between different brands of toilet paper. So how do we choose? How do we choose which brand of toilet paper we're going to buy when we go to the supermarket? Well, if we have previously seen advertising for a particular brand, then we will feel more familiar with that brand, right? We will feel more like we know that brand, like we trust that brand, even subconsciously, right? Even if we are not conscious of this, we feel drawn to this brand. We feel drawn to it because we have seen advertising about it before. And so it seems familiar and trustworthy to us. So one of the main reasons that companies will advertise is brand recognition, just so that people, the public, right, that they recognize the brand, that they've seen the brand before on an advert or a commercial. And so that actually increases the number of people who will buy that brand. Another technique that advertisers will use is something called association. So they will try to associate their product with a particular emotion or feeling, right? For example, a bank may try to associate their brand with a feeling of safety, security, and trustworthiness. Yes, they will try to associate their logo with this emotion, this feeling of trustworthiness, safety, and security. And in their advertising, you will often see these messages you will often get this feeling of safety, trustworthiness in the advertising. And then your brain creates an association between the bank and this emotion of trustworthiness and safety and security. So take another example like Coca-Cola, for example. Now, Coca-Cola advertising is ubiquitous, right? You can find it in any country in the world, basically, maybe except for North Korea. You can find Coca-Cola advertising everywhere. What kind of association do Coca-Cola try to make in their advertising? Usually, they try to make an association between the feeling of fun, happiness, enjoyment, and being with your friends with their drink, Coca-Cola, right? And so that when you go to the supermarket and you want to treat yourself, right? You're feeling like, I've had a long day at work. I want to treat myself to something, so that you will be more drawn to Coca-Cola than Pepsi, because Coca-Cola brings up these feelings of fun, enjoyment, happiness, being with friends, because you saw it in the advertising. You saw the brand Coca-Cola, and then you saw like young people having fun on the beach or something. That's a typical Coke advert. And then so when you go to buy a drink, you feel more drawn to the Coca-Cola, often in a subconscious kind of way. So anyway, that's how advertising works. So if you think that advertising doesn't work on you, I don't know, maybe it does. Maybe it actually does. Anyway, thanks for watching this B2 Upper Intermediate video, and I will see you in the next one.